All right, welcome back to the floating logo sign tutorial. This is part three. This is where we will get into the actual logo, and we're going to go over a couple things. We're going to go over the JPEG to SVG conversion if necessary. I will go ahead and say that 99% of the time it is necessary. And then we'll also go into how to save the file, how to open the file, and how to reuse your base design over and over so that way you don't have to make adjustments to that file every time. So we'll start with that. As you can see, we have the sign that we designed in part 1 and 2 saved over here, and I have it named as floating logo sign base master, and then in parentheses I have save as. That's just a reminder to me that this is the master file. As soon as I open it, I need to save it as whatever the logo that I'm going to be doing is. And then that way, this always stays fresh. And let's go ahead and open this. So we'll double click on that file. Here is the sign that we made last time. And I will go up here and hit save as. And we're going to choose our 3D print, floating logo signs. I've got a bunch of different folders here, but we will save this as tutorial. And we will hit save. Now, this is saved as our tutorial, which means that we can do whatever we want with this file, and it's not going to mess with our original master file over here. So we can get out of there. And your first step is to highlight the logo component. So now we are not working on the base at all. We will not work on the base any during this part except for just to cut the holes where they match on the back of the logo itself. So let's jump over to go over to Chrome, and you can see how I go about doing the conversion. So I use vectorizer.ai. This is a really, really great converter. I've tried Inkscape. I've tried a bunch of the online converters, and while you can get a decent product, this one by far exceeds the quality of all the other ones that I've been able to get. This is a paid product, so obviously that's going to rule it out for a lot of people. But I would say, if you're doing any of this work commercially, or even if you're just doing it on the side, once or twice a month, if you're spending more than 15 minutes on doing an image conversion over to an SVG and you're charging for that time, the money spent for this is a no-brainer. I mean, it's just that quick and it gives you such a nice product that it doesn't make any sense to fiddle around. If you're doing it for free and you're trying to just learn, maybe it doesn't make sense. But for me, I was doing so many of these signs and I do other work with, SVGs that this makes loads of sense in my business plan. So, you can certainly, look on YouTube. There's loads of tutorials out there for Inkscape or any of the other online converters or Adobe Illustrator if you're into that. But here we're going to focus on Vectorizer because it is the quickest, easiest, and it has the best results. So let's open up a tab, and I've already got the Minnesota Wild logo searched here. So basically what I do is I will just find, a decent quality. Doesn't have to be the best quality in the world, but something like that. And you can literally just drag it right on over here, drop it right in there. It's doing its conversion now. And you can see that it has taken that JPEG and converted it to an SVG. And again, I mean, for what we're doing here, just the quality of this is way better than any other service that I've used. Every now and then, with a real complex logo or photo, get some issues, but they're easy enough to fix. Afterwards you can throw it into. I use Affinity Designer, or you can throw it into Inkscape and do some cleanup and then bring it into Fusion, or you can fix it in Fusion, but Fusion definitely does not excel at SVG cleanup. So we'll go to download, and here are my settings. You can take a screenshot of these settings, or you can go to the product page on my website, linked below. If you're going to just download the base instead of designing it, I have a screenshot of these settings in the information for that floating logo sign. Okay, so let's hit download. I'll go into your download folder, and we'll jump back over to Fusion. Right, so for Fusion, what we're going to do, we have the logo component selected, and we are just going to go up here to Insert SVG. We will go to where this downloaded, right there, and hit Open. Now select that construction plane, that the offset plane that we created on part one, actually part two, and that is where we will place it. For some reason it always comes in upside down, no problem. You just flip it over 90 degrees. And I always keep, so remember we said it's going to be 200 millimeters. 200 millimeters is always going to be the base sign for any of my floating logos. But sometimes it'll be 200 millimeters high. Sometimes it'll be 200 millimeters wide. Just depends on the logo. Obviously, this one's going to be wide. So we will do our adjustment. Usually just take that and just make it, I don't want it to be the exact width of the sign. I do want it, or the base, I want it to be a little smaller. And then what I do here is I just make sure that there's kind of equal, again, once you print this and you have it set up, it's really going to be hard to tell because it is going to be offset from the sign or the base. So I just try and get equal distances on both sides. We'll go over a little bit to the right, and I think that looks pretty good there. So that's the maximum width that we're going to get. Obviously, this sign is way too tall to make sense for this. So we will just hit OK. And then we're going to hit W. Again, that is my hotkey for the parameters. And we are going to adjust the base height. We'll say 150. Hit enter. And actually, that reminds me, this is going, since we created everything from the center origin, it's going to adjust from the center of the base. So what we'll do, if you ever see a green, anything in green in Fusion 360, green outlines is going to be fixed. So a lot of frustration, I see a lot of people, and myself included when I first started doing this, is getting very frustrated that you select your entire logo, you hit M for move, and then nothing happens. You can't select, and you end up driving yourself crazy. All you have to do is select the logo and just unfix fix constraint, and it will turn it blue. Now we can select the entire thing, M for move, and then since we already have it somewhat centered, just bring it down, and we'll get it close enough centered onto the origin point. So that looks good. So now whenever we do our parameter adjustments, should be a little better. So we'll go down to 140, see what that looks like. Honestly, that looks pretty good. Let's try 135. Let's see if that's too small. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to just get an equal size border all the way around here. And I think that looks a little better. So let's go with that. Okay. And we're good to go. I always keep the box on. Whenever you do the SVG conversion, you're going to get this box for the original photo. You will end up getting rid of that, but I always keep it on for the this portion to locate it. Just gives you a nice reference all the way around. Now that we have it located where we want, we'll just select around here. I'm just double clicking on that line. It'll select everything that's selected and just hit enter or delete. And there we go. We have our floating logo. It's always going to be 40 millimeters off. You can certainly adjust that whenever at the very end of the last video, part two, we made that offset plane. You can set that at whatever you want. Doesn't matter. I thought 40 millimeters looked pretty nice. So we are going to go to the bottom. Okay, we're going to select the entire SVG, and then we'll hit E for extrude. And we are going to extrude -8 millimeters. Uh, and keep in mind, this first extrusion is going to be the aftmost uh, part of the logo, and this is the one that's going to accept the standoff pegs or standoff legs, whatever you want to call them. I always extrude this -8. One, it always needs to be 8 if you're going to be using the same style inserts for the actual acrylic legs. If not, if you're going to 3D print the legs, then you can kind of make it whatever you want. I just feel like 8 always works really well. And I do a negative extrusion because since I extruded it negatively, we still have access to the original SVG, which will be very helpful whenever we continue extruding these up. So we'll always we'll make everything that's its own color a component. So we'll hit OK. Now this is going to be the tan portion of the logo. So name this tan. Right now, a lot of this is going to be just kind of up to you, how you feel this logo looks best. I always like to offset basically every layer just to give it, again, some more depth, more dimension. I think it looks a little nicer. So that is what we're going to do here. Let's go back over to the logo. So you can see, so basically what I'm going to do next is this green portion, and then I will offset the red and yellow probably on the same plane. Maybe the yellow a little higher, just so it has some shadow, some depth effect. But anything that's going to go through, so you can see with these, everything is going to go through the green layer, and it's ultimately going to pin into the tan layer. So when we go to extrude the green, we're going to extrude all of these portions as one. So this is going to be one full extrusion. And then everything else will be elevated above the green, and the pegs, the pins that go into the sockets will go through the green. So we'll do E for extrude, and we are going to select all of these portions. Now, your first dimension, this dimension is going to be the distance of extrusion, which essentially is the thickness of the part. The reason I say that is that we are going to elevate it, but first we'll go, let's say 2 millimeters is always a pretty decent thickness, but you can see when we extrude it 2 millimeters, it is extruding directly from this base. We want to have some offset, which is where we go to start. That's where the start of the extrusion is. And instead of the profile plane, we're going to do offset. Again, this is totally up to you on how much depth, how much effect you want. I've found that 3 millimeters is a nice bit of distance between the pieces. And we will go new component, since this is a new color. And we'll hit OK. Another thing that's very helpful to do is if you hit Shift N, as in November, we'll do the alternate colors, which I think is very helpful because then it's not the colors, and sometimes you may get a little confused. You can always start coloring these now, but I just like working with this alternating colors, and this helps differentiate what you've uh, applied components to. So this one will be green. Again, I've got the picture always up on the other monitor. That way I can constantly double check myself and make sure that I'm doing this accurately. Now, our sketch is still on this portion, the tan portion. So it's going to be very tough to select it. You certainly can, but selecting faces, you can see how I can select edges, but not faces. I always just hide this one for now, and we'll go with what's next. So what's next? We're going to do the red portion for the trees. We'll select this, do extrude, and keep in mind, we have already extruded the green, right? So we want to make sure that this red is extruded above the green. Makes sense, right? So I'm going to do, let's see, so the green is extruded 3 millimeters, and then it's 2 millimeters thick, right? So if I extrude this 5 millimeters at 2 millimeter thickness, it's going to be sitting right on top of this. So what we'll do is, for distance, we're going to do 2 millimeters again. That's the thickness that I want it to be at. And offset, let's do 7. And again, you don't have to do the math in your head, right? Just play around with it. Hit the bottom square here so that you're looking at a straight-on orthographic view. And I like that. I like to have some at 3. Usually this base one is going to be at 3 millimeters, and then all the other ones will be a little smaller. I think that looks pretty good. Again, totally up to you. This is your time to be artistic and make it how you want to make it. This is a new color, so we're going to go new component. Okay. And we will rename this component red. Now, it's a little more of the same. For the sun, I am going to. This is another thing. So let's go back over to this. Actually, let's hide these two, and let's look directly at this SVG. So this sun is a cutout of the red portion, which means if you extrude this like we did, and then you extrude this, which I'm actually seeing an error, which we'll go back and fix. We forgot to extrude this part of the red, but again, parametric modeling, very easy to fix. If we extrude this and it's on the same plane as the red, we're going to have to add an offset on either of these faces to make it fit. When you extrude something, especially when you're 3D printing, it's not the most accurate thing in the world, so they are not going to fit in there if they're extruded at their current dimensions. So you've got two choices. You can extrude this and have it on the same plane as this, and then add those offsets to where they fit together. Or we can extrude this one just a bit higher, so 2 millimeters higher, to where it's extruding, let's see, there's the red. It's extruding just above this face. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I think that'll look the best. But before we do that, let's fix this. So we extruded this portion but forgot the other part of the red. So we will activate red. And you can see our extrusion here. Double click on that. And all we're going to do is we're going to hold down Control. We're just going to select this other portion. And that adds it in there. New body is fine because it's adding this as a body into the red component. So the red component will have two bodies. It will have this body and that body. But having it as its own component, as a red, a color, it'll help us down the road. So we'll hit OK. Now we're going to reactivate logo. So let's hide red and green. And let's take our sun. E for extrude. We'll select both portions of the sun. Then we can turn these back on just so we can get a visual representation of what we're doing. Bottom. And we're going to go 2 millimeters thick. And our start offset is going to be, I think it's going to be 9. Yes. So hopefully that makes sense. So instead of adding a new component here, okay, and that one yellow. So instead of offsetting these faces to where they can fit right in between these red portions, I elected to just bring it up a bit higher so you don't have to mess with offsets. Again, totally personal choice, but I will say the more complex of a logo you get into, the more you're going to want to find this method because adding offset faces to complex shapes is often very tough to do in Fusion, and it doesn't really enjoy doing that kind of work. So I think this looks pretty good. And then we've got I think part left, just the star. So I think the star, make sure that we have the logo, and we'll just turn off all of these and keep tan on. We'll hit E for extrude. There's the star. And I think we'll just do, say, 2 millimeters thick. And for the offset, I think we'll do 9 as well. That looks pretty good. It'll be on the same plane as the sun. Right? And new component. Okay. And white. Right. So that's it for creating the layers. Now we're going to move into the pins and sockets. Okay, for these, I like to isolate each component. That way, if you need to go back and make any changes, then those active components will have, an accurate timeline down here. And I always start with the tallest component. So just start out with the star first. Activate that. Now, the pins, I found that a sweet spot is to have the pins go in 4 millimeters into this base piece. So what you can do if you can't remember, where or how long the pin needs to be, you can just click on that surface, down control, click on that surface, and it'll tell you the distance right here, which is 9 millimeters. So 9 millimeters plus 4 is going to be 13. So we will make uh, the pin 13. And you can see this one is probably going to be a little small to have a regular, because since the pins are circular, you need to have at least 2 to prevent this part from spinning, right? So you can either do maybe we could do like a triangle shaped pin, or what I generally do with these is I will just make a sketch on the back side of a complex item. I'll do an offset, and then that offset can be extruded. I'll show you what I mean. So we will get rid of these other components. Base, and let's turn off the sketch. We have this component activated, and do a new sketch on the back of it. Go to offset. Actually, we need to project first. I have the auto project off. So we'll project that. Then we'll go offset. We can offset that. Then I think something like that will be fine. let's just see what that looks like. Extruded. We'll extrude that. What did we say? 9 plus 4, so 13. And we'll join. The only time I add a taper to this is if I'm just doing the circle. If I'm doing any more complex geometry like this, I will not taper because 9 times out of 10, Fusion cannot compute, and you end up getting some errors. So that is the first one, and then we can what we can do is bring up the tan and just kind of make sure that that looks about right, which it does. So remember, this is 8 millimeters thick, so it looks like it's going halfway through, so that'll be fine. Now I understand that this is going through the other components as well. It's going through this green component here, but at the very end we'll go through, we'll do the combined cut to Boolean cut through that. So let's go to yellow now, activate this one, and then just hit isolate, click and hit isolate, and sketch. For this one, I am going to do the circles, and I found that 4 millimeters is a good size for these. If I don't dimension them all first, I will add the circles first. These are connected, but that's a very small connection point, one that is probably small enough that our 3D printer may miss it. So I'm going to add 2 on this bottom one in case, just in case that snaps or if it doesn't connect during the 3D printing process. And then this one, I think might look a little bit better. Let's go to project. Then we'll do the offset here. Again, this is all totally up to you. Whatever you think looks right, go for it. Hit OK. Now I'll do E for extrude. Select, actually, let's go back. Sorry, I missed. Let's go back into the sketch. We did not dimension these yet. Back. The offset. Offset that. Okay. Now you can just highlight all. This is why I don't have auto project on. If I had auto project on and I went to highlight everything in the scene, it would also highlight, just like this one, since we did project it, it would highlight the outer profile of it. And if you have a real complex scene, then it just takes a lot of time to go through here and individually select all of these. So this one's not ideal, but we can hold Control, click on that to unselect it. Actually, let's do just the circles first, because then you can do an equal constraint. Make sure they're all the same size. Then D for dimension, and 4 millimeters. Now all of these are the same size, and they're all 4 millimeters. Test that by clicking on one. There you go. And let's just move that one to where it's within the profile, and that looks good. Now, you can hit E for extrude. Select those. And this one was, always do is just turn on the tan. Top there. And then for distance, we can do, I'm going to do this in 2 different operations. That way I can add the taper onto the circle extrusions. Top again. I think this one was the same, right? So we'll do 13. That looks good. It's halfway through. And then do a negative 2-degree taper. And the reason I do the taper is just that way if you have any, elephant foot or if you have any blobs or anything on here, it just gives you a little bit of wiggle room. Again, whenever you go to push this in, maybe it doesn't seat all the way to the end, but you're not going to be able to tell. Whereas if it was completely straight and then this opening was completely straight, basically the design and the print needs to be absolutely perfect. So the taper just allows some tolerance. Join is good, and okay. Do another E for extrude. Turn the sketch back on. Like that. And you can Select tan and just click the end of this and it will extrude that. We can try the taper angle on here. Let's try -2. Okay, that one does work. So we'll do, if I can do the taper, then I do the taper. This is a pretty simple shape, so I was able to process it. And then it's just more of the same. Go through the rest of these. I will speed this up and I will stop if I have anything else useful to say. That way we don't make this video too long. Okay, now whenever I do the green, which is going to be the one that has these other upper components cut through it, I will leave all of the other ones on, and that way I can see where they're coming through, and that prevents me from making an attachment point where another attachment point is coming through. Again, this is totally random, but also just think about the design, think about how it's going to look whenever it's on the sign. Just try to do somewhat equal spacing. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. And then again, let's turn off these sketches. You can see now, if I had auto project on, whenever I go to select all of these newly created circles, it would select every bit of this geometry, and then I'd have to unselect everything. And again, if you're just, there was a point in time where I was doing this over and over and over for so many designs that gets really frustrating really quick. So why I turned that off. And now I'll just get into the habit of just projecting whatever surfaces I need to project. So again, we have those highlighted. We'll do an equal constraint, D for dimension. That's E. D for dimension. You can see that they all auto adjust since they have the equal constraint applied. Now E for extrude. Once again, just highlight all of them. We'll turn on tan, top view. And that was a 3 mm, so we'll do 7. Yeah, so it looks like you can see all of the different extrusions are the same depth. And those are all circles, -2 degree, paper. Okay, so done with the pens. The next thing that I like to do is go ahead and do the Boolean cuts. So looks like with this design, the only component that is, or I guess the only two components that are getting cut are going to be this green face. They're going to get cut by all these pens going through it, and then the tan face that's going to accept all of the pens. So for that, we will highlight the overall component. And you can see, you can always tell whenever you haven't applied a Boolean cut yet, that you can see the dark lines that we have on the edges of all the parts. Where they actually go in to cut through, there is no dark line there, which shows that those two parts are occupying the same space. So once we do the Boolean cut, you'll see that there's an actual hard line there. We'll go to combine. The target body, we're going to start with this green one. The tool bodies are going to be everything that's cutting through that. You can see that it turns the same color. That's because right now it's on join. We'll go to cut, and let's go ahead and keep tools because we're going to keep the cutting tools. Just go through and select, and you don't have to hold down control for this. Go through and select everything that's going to be cutting through that green bit. That looks good. Hit OK. Now you can see that you have that dark line there. If we turn off yellow, you can see that we've made the cuts. Again, 3D printing, that is an exact size cut for this exact size pen. So we will be adding some tolerances, but that's much easier than you may anticipate because we add all of the offset tolerances onto the pens themselves. So we can just select those in one fell swoop and add the tolerance. But let's continue with the combine. So this one's going to be the target body now, the tan. And then for the tool bodies, we can go through and select. So right to left selection will select anything that selection box contacts. You don't have to get the entire thing into the selection box. And that looks good to me. We've got everything selected. Keep tools is still on, and OK. Now, you can see that we've cut through green and we've cut into the tan. Perfect. So the last step is to provide those tolerance offsets for all the pens. So we're going to hide this tan, select top here, and then we're going to do offset face. You can hit, if you hit O, it takes you back into the sketch. So I use offset face so often that I have it on my, if you click S, you've got your kind of quick favorites. So that way you don't have to keep constantly coming up here. I know that sounds super lazy, but the more efficient you are, the faster you get work done. Then we'll just click offset face again, right to left. And since we have the logo, the overarching component that's housing all of these other components, it will allow us to select anything within that component. So right to left selection will select all of those pins. It does not select the bodies, the attaching bodies, just the pins themselves. So this is exactly what we want. This is where you kind of hope and pray that it's all going to work together. I find that a -0.1 millimeter is a nice offset, and that provides that it's still a friction fit, and it's a very satisfying click when you go to install these. So 0.1 seems to have worked. We'll hit OK. Now all of these are offsets. Now let's go to a orthographic view. It's kind of tough to tell, but you can see here we have a 0.1 offset between these two. This is the taper, and then this is the tolerance offset that we just applied. We can turn the tan on, and that's why I'm saying that the offset part is not hard because we're not going through and doing every bit individually. And that's another important reason to have all of these pens extrude the same depth. That way you can just select them and all together. And then what we can do is we can add ourselves analysis, section analysis. Just it really doesn't matter which side or top plane, but you can see this one right here. Gives us a nice little offset top as well around this to provide enough room to actually install it. Okay. Now we can turn off the analysis. All right, on the home stretch. So at this point, go to the back. We are going to select the tan, do a new sketch, and then we're going to P for project. We're just going to select this face, and what that will do is it will project all of our cut throughs that we've made onto the back face here. That way when we go to make our holes for the acrylic or 3D printed rods, it's not going to interfere with any of these pens. So I generally do 3. Do 1, 2, 3. Again, make them whatever you want, whatever looks best to you. Go through and I will select those 3, equal constraint, D for dimension. That is going to be 14 meters. That looks good. So now you know that that is not going to interfere with E for extrude. And I extrude these 7 minus 7 meters. So almost the full distance. Only do that because the TPU inserts that I designed are that size. And I put a positive 2-degree taper angle. You can see that flares out the inside a bit. That way when we install the TPU adapter, it's almost a mechanical retention since it's flared out. The TPU is flexible enough to get it installed, but once it's in there, it's really hard to take out because it has that 2-degree taper. If you're just using the 3D printed standoffs, then you can certainly just leave this at 0, or do the -2 for the taper if you'd like. But I really like the look of the acrylic rods, and it's worth the extra work for me. This looks like it's maybe a little too close to the edge down here, but that's easy. We can go through, turn the sketch back on, and really just move this wherever you want. It'll move the extrusion. Again, the beautiful thing about parametric design with a timeline. So, okay, that looks pretty good. All right, so that's it for the logo. We're gonna jump back over to the base real quick, and we will put the correlating standoff holes on the base. That's very easy. We will activate the base, do a new sketch right on the face, E for project. We are going to project this back base, just like that. And you can see that it brings up the profile as well as our holes. We can just hide the logo now. E for extrude. Select these 3. -7. Went to new body, so we'll make sure that's a cut. And once again, for the TPU inserts, I put a +2 taper. Okay, that's it. So now we have our logo. Select the entire thing. Again, this always works, so you can bring that out and see that that is the overall design. Now we'll make the TPU adapters just in case you're curious to see how they're made, as well as the pins. Again, they're on my MakerWorld website or MakerWorld account, so I've got a link to that in the description if you want to just jump over there and download them instead of making them. But I think it's useful to know how to do it. So we will select the base. And again, you don't have to design everything. If you design one of these, you know that it's the same size as the other, the other 5 that you've created. So just design it once. You can, make copies in Bamboo Slicer. Much easier, quicker that way. So for the base, actually what we'll do is we'll go create a new component. Call this component insert and standoff. Okay. And then we can project. Let's see. Before you can project, you need to decide on what surface you're going to design on. I'm going to design on the inside of this. It's asking to capture the position because we did swing out that kickstand, so it's wanting to know if we want to make that swing out a permanent part of our design or revert back to where we had it. So I'm just going to revert. That way it'll put the kickstand back in there. So we can E for extrude. We'll just extrude that face. We're able to select it because we did project it. We'll just extrude it up to here. That is going to be a new body. You can see that it's not correct because we need to match the taper angle. So we'll do -2. You can see that -2 matches, fits in there absolutely perfect. Okay. Let's remove this body for now. Back to the sketch. Circle. Go right in the middle of that. Again, this depends on what you're going to use. Are you going to use a wooden dowel? Use the acrylic rod. I use the acrylic rod, which is 10 millimeters. So I could do like 9.95, something like that. And that way, because this is TPU, it's going to grab on to that. Those acrylic rods, they have some deviation with the manufacturing. So, it could be anywhere from 10 thousandths to 20 thousandths low. So if you make this smaller, it's going to grab onto whatever size that you put in. You may have to mess with this a bit, but due to the flexibility of the TPU, which is why I designed it in TPU, it's going to deform enough to capture that standoff. So we'll just go there, and we can turn that hit finish sketch, turn this body back on. We'll E for extrude, and you can just hold down the left mouse button since we can't select it yet, and just go through this list to select what you want. Just go up to there. It is cut. Okay. That's our TPU adapter. Again, I'm not going to go through and design all of them. There's really no point. Just go in the slicer and duplicate it. And then the standoff is even easier. We're just going to hit E for extrude. Turn the sketch back on. It's just going to be that. Then we're going to turn the logo back on. Face off. And it's going to extrude to there. That's it. Instead of join, we don't want it to be join. We want it to be new body. Hit OK. So now within this, we've got our insert. Standoff. Perfect. That's it for this one. The next video, we will go through the actual export from Fusion 360. We'll go through applying the appearances and importing and setting up in Bamboo Studio to easily print, get the best quality, and to easily change the colors as well. So if you want to do any custom colors or anything like that, you can absolutely do it super quick. I think that's all we got on this one. Again, if this was helpful, like, subscribe, all that. And if you're interested in the vectorizer software, I do have an affiliate link in the description below, as well as a link to my website if you want to just download the base and the kickstand already made and just worry about the logo itself. All right, thank you a lot, and see you on episode 4 to go over the slicing in Bamboo Studio.